Hi, I'm Mary McNamara, television critic for the Los Angeles Times, and this is Talking TV. And today we're chatting in a happy, sad way about White Collar. We're sad because it's entering its final season, and we're one episode in. Tonight will be the second episode of 6, and we're happy because we're joined by creator Jeff Easton and star Tim DeKay. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, how are you feeling? How are we feeling?
Good, I think. I won't get sad, I think, until December 18th when the finale rolls up.
Yeah, there are all these different goodbyes. When you wrap, that's one goodbye. And when you finished your ADR, which is the thing that you do in post to make sure that you don't sound as if there's a wind machine behind you or something like that, there's that goodbye. So after each episode airs, there's another goodbye.
Well, I'm very sad, and I'm sad that it's only 6 episodes. Why did you guys decide just to go with 6?
Well, you're asking the wrong guys. Why we decided that?
Was that decided for you?
It may have been. It was interesting because when they first said, we'd expected 13, which seems to be the new standard in cable, and we'd been used to 16 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came to say 6, at first it was like, And then, ultimately we looked at it and said, you know what, this is a good opportunity because White Collar was always sort of a, case of the week kind of show with some mythology wrapped around it. We said, to hell with that. Let's just make it about the characters and just do this as, treat it like really like a limited series. And that ultimately, I think, was a really nice way to go out. So, kind of the silver lining.
Well, you did sort of have that built-in expiration date because how long was Neil going to hang around, and how before you finally took the anklet off of him, how long was that,
Well, it's interesting because now that the show's ended, I can say, I don't know how we were going to be able to do that after 3 because his term was 3, but then.
Well, he was going to get rearrested.
Exactly.
right.
Jeff told me, well, he'll just have to escape and you'll have to arrest him.
Right. And then the FBI will just have to fudge on their deal and all of that stuff.
Well, originally when I pitched the series, it was a 5 years was sort of the thing back then. And it was like, 5 year, that's it. He's only in for 5. We never thought it would go this long.
Really?
No, I mean.
I remember when it debuted, I think I reviewed it. I mean, I remember writing about it a lot because one of the things that struck me about it was that, at a time when a lot of crime drama was very violent, you guys were not violent. You went with like kind of the smart, sophisticated, the art of the heist and the con. What was that a hard sell? Was it, were people like going, where are the lacerated bodies of the victims?
Not at all. Surprisingly, the way it had come about was it actually White Collar at one point was called it was called Redemption. It was a much darker version. It was like,
oh really?
Yeah, Neil's character was going to be this sort of, Vic Mackey, coming off of The Shield, which is one of my favorite shows. He's going to be this guy who killed his partners in prison, and they had to let him out to go help, try to get back the daughter of this, politician whose daughter had been taken. They put him on an anklet. And, David Madden and Matt Lowe's over at Fox had met with USA and said, could you, have you seen USA? And I said, not really. And they said, that's not their kind of show. Go watch it and then run it through that blue sky filter. So what came out was a much lighter. So really it was sort of designed for USA. And, I think to their credit, I mean, we sort of sold it in the room. I walked in and said, here it is. And, I remember Jackie DeCrentis was in there and went, sold. And that was it. So
Is
really.
That what she said?
She said done.
That's great.
She really did.
What did you think when you saw it? I mean, I think, the Neil Caffrey characters obviously was kind of like the hook, here's this kind of, but the Peter Burke character is the much harder role, in my opinion, because you're the nice, solid, you're the good guy, the solid good guy. And yet I feel like you've brought to that role, like so much complexity and so much depth without ever falling into like that broken hero trap there are dark moments, there's times when you get angry, but it's not like you're not nursing a secret addiction or you're a bigamist in reality. There's none of that. I don't know about you personally, but
there goes. No, you're right.
You can have a baby. You can't be a bigamist.
Well, it's not Elizabeth's. It's not yours, actually.
We don't. Oh, good. Even I don't know. No, I think that's one of the things that attracted me about the show, what Jeff had written, but also what I thought was the crux of the show was not so much Neil's character or Peter's character, but their relationship. And whenever I was in trouble or in doubt throughout the seasons, I would look to that relationship. Well, how would this action be in response to the relationship of the two. And I've also found it very fun. I thought those just interesting to see these two characters who would not normally be together. Yeah.
And I assume you and Matt get along. It seems like you're having a great time.
We have a great time. I've always said that Neil and Peter do not implicitly trust each other, but Tim and Matt do. And so when you have that, you're able to just bounce right off and play.
To your point, it was much harder to cast Peter. We'd cast Matt earlier, and it took us a long time, and we had to go in several times, and we saw a lot of people. But I remember we were there, and it was the scene from the pilot where you'd forgotten her anniversary, and you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember watching you guys, and it was the first time we ever saw that chemistry between Matt and anybody. And,
really?
Yeah, and it was so. Jeff Wachtel, who was president of the USA at the time, leaned over and he goes, "We got him."
Oh, that's awesome. That's
You're finally hearing that story 5 years later.
I never heard that. I tell him this story every time. He always pretends,
that he never.
No, I don't.
Such a good
And we
actor.
shot that scene during the pilot. We shot that scene, which was a big acting scene. A lot of moments that were well written, worthy enough to have it in the audition room. And that scene was shot at night,
worst
in the rain,
Oh my goodness.
worst conditions. We had one officer who somewhat helped us through the streets.
Yeah, but you were actually driving.
I was actually
for
driving.
real. It wasn't towed, and you almost hit a guy, and it was
Because somebody went in between the
Turns
it's
into
New
a
York.
real crime
Yeah, we were
drama.
filming in New York as we do.
and it was
so.
raining, and I remember
they-
the sound person asking me if I could just do the windshield wipers when we weren't talking. So it'd be
So
dialogue.
you're like
Oh, they're silent. I'll turn them on. Good, because now I can see. Anyway.
timing the windshield wipers to
Yeah.
the dialogue. Okay, we got a ton of questions from people through social media, and I have a million questions myself, but I'm going to ask their questions because that's the kind of person I am. Okay, let's see. Donna G on Google Plus asks, for Tim, did you ever come up with any of your own details for Peter's backstory that affected the way you portrayed him? Were there any things that you wish that you could have explored that you haven't been able to explore? Is there more?
Oh,
Baseball's obvious to me.
The baseball one is the obvious one, but it was nice because before each season, the writers and I would sit down and we talk about what stories we'd like to explore each season, and baseball was one of them. They found out I could ride horses, and they found out I could skate.
Wow.
Somewhat, and played hockey when I was a little kid. I don't know. Were there other?
Well, there was a lot of. I mean, there was a lot of just the conversations we had, just in terms of the Peter, who is Peter, those kind of things. You contributed a lot to. I think.
I think so. Yeah, I was concerned, as you had expressed earlier, that he wasn't just by the books, Joe Friday, but then also not a bumbling idiot who let Caffrey just get away with everything. So at some point I remember thinking, I've got to make Peter seem as if he knows Caffrey's doing it and he's letting him. And therefore I felt like Peter had the upper hand.
The leash is long, but it's there.
But it's there.
Right,
Right?
yeah.
For me, when I would write Peter from the pilot, I based him a lot on Dennis Leary's character in Thomas Crown Affair, which is a much harsher, kind of meaner. It's Leary. It's very, and it was interesting to me because Tim would take that and soften it. Like the mistake I think sometimes we would make is trying to write Peter as you, and then you would soften that again.
Right.
But you could take that and really soften it. So what we ended up with, I think, was in a really good place. But the other thing that I always thought that Tim was able to nail is Peter. Neil and Peter were the two smartest guys in the room, but Peter, you would never know it. And Tim, what he really brought to that for me was he could play that, very kind of blue collar guy, but there was that underlying intelligence that you always carried through so well.
Oh, thanks. That was acting because ask my wife, and I have no underlying intelligence whatsoever.
All the time,
But you can't skate, and that's important.
That's true.
So Dorothy on Google asks, do you ever regret killing Kate?
No.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Sorry, Kate.
No. Look, at one point, Kate, when I discussed at one point that the end of season 2 was going to be, the poster was going to be Neil and Kate with guns on each other. It was going to be a big, kind of big standoff between the two of them. That was ultimately, what we wanted to do. But the issue ultimately became we cast Alexandra Daddario, who played Kate, and I mean, she did a really good job for us. The problem was at the time we cast her, she was so much sweeter and nicer than that Kate. So for me, it was like really filling in the details of Neil's life, and Kate started making a great deal of sense in terms of Neil having sort of this perfect love, this woman at least he held up on a pedestal, and then the realization later that she wasn't right for him, that he wasn't that person. Because for me, Neil always wanted Peter's life. He wanted Elizabeth. He wanted that white picket fence. And for Neil, the discovery was that actually that he didn't. That's not who he is and what he wanted. So no.
It also allowed him to cycle through a lot of women on the show.
Well, that didn't hurt either.
There's that.
That didn't hurt either. But yeah, we were okay. I was okay with killing Kate. I wish we'd have done it probably. I wish we'd have spent more on the special
That was,
effects
I
on the
remember
plane.
when that plane blew up. That was insane. Okay, so Jordan wants to know, what is the best prank Tim or Matt has played on the cast and crew? Do you
Ooh.
guys play pranks?
Yeah, I've got one, but you've probably got some better ones.
There's one prank that I could tell you, but it happens in the final episode.
You don't know it yet.
So,
Oh, that's well, I got
spoiler
we can
prank.
tell that one.
okay, you tell it.
There's a version of this one where, again, without spoiling anything, we'll just say that Matt was in some kind of suit with a zipper. Okay, you want to go from there? Yeah,
And we as actors thought he was clothed underneath that zipper, but he wasn't.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And is that
so-
footage going to be available on YouTube? Because I'm sure it would do very well.
I think that would shut down
Yeah,
the internet.
that really would.
Kim
But,
Kardashian would have nothing.
it was-
Oh my gosh.
pretty
So
good.
that's the secret footage of White Collar.
Yeah,
It will be the
I've seen the
prank.
secret.
More than
Well,
just
here's the
footage.
real
More
secret.
than footage.
The real secret was Matt was
Oh my goodness.
talked. Can I
He
say
was.
that? He was. I've seen the footage. He was. I hope. He
I'm
was.
so
This is a
glad.
family
This is-
newspaper.
It is.
So
It
yeah,
is.
but yeah, that was the funny part to us.
It was hilarious.
Doing it later.
Oh my goodness. That
The
is
other thing
hilarious.
is when Willie Garson came in and pretended he was a stripper.
Oh, that was a good one. This is off of
in
Magic.
So
honor
like there's a
Magic
lot of
Mike.
nudity.
It was a great job.
There seems to be.
A lot of nudity on White Collar.
Matt was
Color.
also, if anybody remembers, this dates it a few, but there was icing people with Smirnoff Ice became a thing where you would stick a Smirnoff Ice somewhere and whatever. I'd reach into
I'm not sure I know where this is going, but
reach into a chip bag. Oh, they put one in there and then you're supposed to drop to a knee and drink it. It was a thing. It was an internet meme for a while. And Matt had sent this really nice, beautiful gift to all the writers, and we thought it was going to be some really nice thing. We opened it up and it was all these Smirnoff Ices. So he was able to get us from a distance, which was kind of awesome.
That is very
The
neat
zipper thing
effort.
was much better. It was. So
we won't be able to watch the zipper scene without thinking about that.
exactly.
No.
I wanted to ask a question. One of the things about doing a show that's based on like kind of these clever cons and heists is that you have to keep coming up with
Correct,
them.
yes.
So how
I said the
how
same
did
thing.
you do? I mean, do you have like a group of people that are just like rifling through the news stories to come up with
Yeah, to an
Ideas
extent.
or-
A lot of it was just brute force. I mean, it was hours and hours and hours. I remember probably the one, I think the breakthrough one, because at a certain point we said, we're done. We can never come up with another one. We're out. And it was, I remember it was Bad Judgment, and we were sitting there, and it was when you guys were talking to a detective, and the guy has to like sort of wink and nod and tell you guys to look into this judge.
Right.
But he couldn't like let you know he is. And so we banged our head, and finally what I came up with is he leaves you a specific amount of change. And he says, I'll get the tip. And he leaves the tip, and you guys go, $7 or $7.42. That's a weird number to leave for that. And you go look at case numbers. And right then I think it sort of was a breakthrough. It's like, oh, I see. If we look at this, think hard enough, we can figure it out. So that's really what it was. It was just constantly, hopefully refining. And
what was
trying.
your favorite one? What was your favorite like crime?
Crime, I would say, I mean, look, my favorite episode, probably just in terms of the heist, had to probably be, blanking on that episode number. I'm sure somebody on Twitter can tell me. But it was where we go into the Italian consulate, and Matt had done this, or Neil had done this beautiful sculpture of Vulcan and hidden the tools inside it. And I just the way we shot it and everything else, I think it was really well done. That was probably my favorite. I don't know if you have one.
It was great. I love
What
the
was
pilot.
yours?
But
What was yours?
I
The
love
pilot was
the pilot. Just children's books, and the bonds were hidden inside. I think that's really clever. But also the thing about leaving the change on the table, that's the essence of the capers of White Collar. So you can leave the change, that moment, that's it. There's your moment. And it doesn't matter what was stolen or who's being framed or whatever. That's the cool moment that you love.
Patsy Ann on Twitter wants to know, she want to know which episode was your favorite. Did you have a favorite season? Did you have a favorite kind of storyline?
No, I didn't. They all meant something different to me. I enjoyed pursuing a Nazi sub.
I'm surprised they let us do that. I gotta say, you know. That one, by the way, just as an aside, the network, Jeff October was president. I kept it from him for a long time.
Oh, the Nazi sub?
Finally says, so the big thing this year, Nazi sub full of art. And I remember he thought we were kidding at first, but anyway.
But in that episode, when Neil and Peter were about to go down there and look at the treasure and look at the art, there's a moment where Neil says, because they may die, they don't know there could be a booby trap, and he says, listen, I just want you to know. And Peter just looks at him and says, yeah, me too. And that's it. And then I thought, oh, in this little moment in this high suspense drama is, again, the quintessential white collar.
I would say, I mean, outside of, the pilot, outside of the ultimate finale, I would say my favorite was probably one called Free Fall. It's where Neil does a free fall.
That was great.
I felt like it was when we figured out exactly what the series was. So that was probably it for me.
Some of the stunts were really amazing. Even this season when he zip lines with the belt, I was like, oh my God. And that was funny when Peter says, why is it always heights? That's so funny.
Oh, that's what we played. There was, we did one at the Roosevelt tram where Neil jumps from one to another, which again, that was another one I thought a really good episode.
So Lauren on Twitter wants to know if you could choose one guest character to bring back, who would it be?
I would have to say Sarah.
Yeah.
Hillary Burton. Because I love Hillary, and I thought Sarah and Hillary together just had the essence of the show and understood the duplicity of it. And Peter had it. Peter liked Sarah. And
yeah. And Tim liked Hillary.
And Tim did.
Maybe I'd say the same for me. I mean, everybody else we kind of did bring back. Ross McCall, who plays Keller, who I love. I mean, he's fantastic. He's ground through this season. We brought Hagen back last year, who I wanted to do. I think I would say Sarah.
When you started it, did you see Mozzie as important a character as he became?
Yes,
eventually?
just different. Out of all the characters, Willie Garson really defined him more than I think anybody else did. Because if you watch the pilot, he's a much darker, creepier little guy.
He is.
There was a show called Dirt with Courtney Cox, and I apologize for not remembering the actor, but there was a guy who he talked to his cat. He was a much creepier guy. That was a little bit what I was looking for from Mozzie. And
that was Willie Garson.
It was, yeah. But Willie came in and really he made it. Mozzie was supposed to be funny, but Willie made it much funnier than it was ever supposed to be.
Well, it's been really nice, especially in this season, seeing your relationship with Peter's relationship with Mozzie become that dinner scene was really nice.
Yeah, now that really, I mean, it was Neil.
And it does feel like we're closing certain loops as we go.
Exactly. So, but that really, that triad of Neil, Peter, and Mozzie was always intended to be. The core. The core.
So you said earlier that you felt like that they still don't trust each other. Do you still feel like Peter and now I'm going that they don't trust each other?
Do I still feel that?
Yeah, the characters.
In certain areas, they do trust each other implicitly. Others, they don't. I think now Peter doesn't trust Neil. Not that he'll break the law for the wrong reason. I think Peter knows he wouldn't do that for the wrong reason, but he would break the law for what Neil may think is the right reason. And Peter would say to him, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, you're breaking the law. That's where he doesn't trust him to make the right decision.
So will the end, I'm assuming they will still, may not go off into the sunset together, but I'm assuming we won't see a huge breakup of the.
Well,
you're not going to.
Without spoiling anything, I mean, because a lot of people have asked me, and the only thing I can say is, because people say, well, could you do a white collar movie?
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Several people were asking, is there a possibility for a movie or an event?
I'll say two things. One is, if you watch White Collar, you know that nothing is ever what it seems. And to the answer of could we do a movie, we could always do a prequel.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Fair enough.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Hopefully everybody will not hate me when it's done. So.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank
And
you.
thank
This was a
you for the
pleasure.
show. I love the show. I'm going to really miss the show.
Thank
And
you. You've
thank you
always
so
been
much.
so kind to us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions or comments on what we should be watching on White Collar or otherwise, just hit Ask LA Times.
Yep. I promise I'll try to get back on Twitter.
Oh, right. People did ask when you were going to get back on Twitter. So he's getting back on Twitter. And look for the secret footage from White Collar.